In this video, we are going to talk about thermodynamics at the molecular level. But first, let's start by thinking about the pressure of the atmosphere, and we'll see how this leads into thermodynamics at the molecular level. So the gas in the atmosphere is subject to the force of gravity, where the force of gravity is equal to the mass times the acceleration due to gravity, which is about 9.8 meters per second squared at the surface of the Earth, where this g here, this acceleration due to gravity, varies with height. So the higher up you go, the weaker it's going to be. The further down you go, the stronger it's going to be. And so the density, which is going to be represented by this Greek letter rho here and has the units of kilograms per meters cubed, will also vary with height. So consider a column of air, which is what I have pictured here at the right, with an area of A, so that's this right here. So we're just looking at this one little sliver here, and the sliver is dh thick, so that's an infinitesimal amount of height thick. And so this will have the volume of this A times this thickness right here. And so the A is the area, this is the thickness, so when we multiply this together, we'll get meters cubed. The mass M is then going to be the density times the area times the height. So remember, density is mass over volume, and this right here is volume, so we're doing mass over volume times volume. That gives us just the mass. For the volume V of gas to remain where it is, so this little volume right here is not moving up or down, we have to have these two forces be equal to each other. And so it must be exerting this force here, which I'm already calling the force due to pressure, and so that's going to be working against gravity, and so we give it a negative sign. So if we're saying that this force is positive, then this force from the pressure is going to be negative because it's pointing in the opposite direction. So the force the gas is exerting is therefore this right here. So we have our mass represented by the rho times A times dH. Then we have our acceleration due to gravity right here. Since pressure is force divided by area, so we want to take our force divided by the area, we want to do this. So this A will cancel out with this A. We just get this rho times this acceleration due to gravity times this thickness of our little disk right there. To determine the total pressure P at height h, so we're at some height h above the surface down here, we integrate both sides, and so we end up with this right here. Since our density is this, so rho is equal to the mass divided by volume, we can get that by taking the number of moles and multiplying it by the molar mass of our particle and dividing that by the volume. And so we can rearrange the ideal gas law like this. So the ideal gas law is PV equals nRT. We just rearrange it so we have N over V equals P over RT. We then multiply both sides by the molar mass, so we get Nm over V equals Pm over RT. We know that N times M is equal to the mass right here, so we get the mass divided by volume is equal to this Pm over RT. And we know that rho is the mass divided by volume, so we can just substitute rho in for this M over V right here. And so now we substitute that into our integral, then we divide both sides by the pressure, and so we end up with this right here, where we have the dP over P, and then we have this right here. So this is our integral. We want to evaluate both sides. So when we evaluate this, we get that the natural log of the pressure is equal to this negative mgh over RT, where this mgh right here would give us the gravitational potential energy. So this would actually be an energy term right here. This can then be rearranged by just doing e to the power of both sides, and so we end up with our pressure being equal to this e to the power of negative mgh over RT. And this is an important result here. This is called the barometric formula. It is a negative exponential function, which is because as we go up in height, the pressure of the air is going to reduce. It is a negative exponential function, as I said, which shows up quite often in physical chemistry. This factor RT, which we will be looking at in more detail here in a little bit, shows up a lot and is termed the thermal energy, and represents the amount of energy due to the temperature. One way to interpret this right here is that it is the competition between the gravitational potential energy, which is up here in the numerator in our exponent, and that is trying to pull air particles down, and the thermal energy, which is RT, which is in the denominator up here, trying to push the particles upward. So again, we have those different forces, one pushing up, one pulling down, we have a competition. And so the distribution of air particles that follows this function is where this competition is in balance. Or another way to think about it is that this right here represents the probability, and actually this is a probability distribution, that a particle is positioned at height h above the ground given its thermal energy RT, the gravity of the planet, this g right here, which is the acceleration, and the molar mass of m. So like I said, this is a probability distribution, and it's the probability of a particle being at this height h. Put in a slightly different way, this right here could be thought of as the probability of finding a particle that has molar mass m and energy RT on a planet with gravitational acceleration g at height h. So again, it's the probability of finding a particle at that height h given all of these other things. So given that the gravitational potential energy is just an energy and it has units of J or joules, this is essentially that the property is proportional to this energy divided by RT. And so this generalizes our result, and this is known as the Boltzmann factor. We can then do this with E as kinetic energy, so we substitute kinetic energy in for this E right here, and we end up with this right here. And so this can be interpreted as the probability of a particle with thermal energy RT, which we know is just going to be temperature since R is a constant, being somewhere in the kinetic energy interval delta E. In other words, the particle having a particular velocity V. So this is, like I said, a probability distribution, and so it's the probability of being in some interval of energy here, and so we can think of that for kinetic energy as the probability of having its velocity in some interval there. And so you might have seen things like this in a general chemistry class. These are the Boltzmann distributions, where we can see when we have a lower temperature, then the probability is going to be that the kinetic energy is lower. Then if we have a higher temperature, then the particle has a higher probability of being at a higher kinetic energy right here. So using this, we can calculate the average energy of a simple of matter. So the simple being something like an atom or a molecule. We can use this right here. So this right here is the average energy. This is the probability, and this is the energy, and then this is also the probability. So these Pi are the probability of a particle having a particular energy E given the temperature T. And so using the kinetic energy as our E, the Boltzmann factor as a probability P. So remember, we said that the Boltzmann factor was a probability distribution, so we'll put that in for these P sub I right here, and we'll put the kinetic energy in for our energy right there. And so what we get for our translational energy, so that's just the energy that it takes to move a particle from one position to another, looks like this after we make these substitutions. So we end up with this right here. And so we are summing over every possible value of velocity. Since the velocity can take any value, in other words, velocity varies continuously, we have to integrate rather than doing these sums right here. And so we end up with this right here. These integrals have known solutions. You can look these up in tables. For instance, this one has this form right here. And when we evaluate these integrals, we end up with this right here as our translational energy. We can do some simplifications to end up with this right here. So our translational energy is equal to 1/2 RT, but this is just in one direction. But space has 3 dimensions, each one contributing its own 1/2 RT to the translational energy of the gas. And this is what's known as the equipartition principle. So essentially we're partitioning up space into its 3 dimensions, and so we get that the average translational energy is equal to this 3/2 RT. This works for single atom gases such as the noble gases, which are spherically symmetrical, and so they have no rotational or vibrational kinetic energy. When we have a molecule, however, so something that's not spherically symmetrical, we need to find the energies of the rotations and vibrations. So rotational energy is given by this. So I is the moment of inertia, and omega here is the angular velocity. This can be broken down into 3 components right here. But what we're looking at is this, where we can have rotation around the z-axis, around the y-axis, and around the x-axis. And so what we can see here is that if we have a nonlinear molecule, then all 3 of these axes will be in play. But if we have a linear molecule, then for instance, the rotation around the z-axis would not actually contribute to it because this is going to be symmetrical around that axis. So there is actually no rotation there. So we have only the y and z axis. So the same analysis we used above for the translational energy, will give us that the rotational energy is also equal to 3/2 RT for a non-linear molecule, because we see we have 3 dimensions we can rotate in, but it's only RT, so it'd actually be 2/2, which is just 1 because we only have these 2 dimensions, and so it just equals RT rather than 3/2 RT. For vibrational energy, we have 3n minus 6 different ways the molecule can vibrate, where n is the number of atoms. This is 3n minus 5 if the molecule is linear, so something like carbon dioxide. There are 2 things we need to consider here, though. So molecular vibrational energy levels are separated by large energy gaps, such that a classical continuous model is insufficient for describing them. So essentially the quanta of energy here are too large. They're not small enough that we can just assume that it's continuous, especially at room temperature. In other words, delta E is greater than RT, where this delta E is the difference in energy levels for vibrations. As such, the vast majority of particles at room temperature will be in the ground state of vibrational energy. The other thing we need to take into account is that ideal vibrational energies are equally spaced. So if you've taken like a general chemistry class, you'll see those energy level diagrams for electronic transitions, and we know that the further up you go, the less space there is between them. But for these ideal vibrational energies, they are equally spaced. So if the first non-zero energy is E, then the next would just be twice that, the third would be 3 times that, and so on. So to calculate the average thermal energy due to vibrations, we use our definition of an average, which remember was this, where we have the probability times the energy divided by this probability right here. So we're summing all these like this, and if we make the substitution that x equals this e to the power of negative e over RT, then we can make this look a little bit nicer like this. So then we can use some approximations here. So what we see is that this thing at the top, which is this power series right here, can be approximated as 1 minus x to the power of negative 2. And then this thing on the bottom right here can be approximated as this 1 minus x to the power of minus 1. And I put this here just so you can see that, especially at these lower numbers right here, these are very good approximations. Then if we make these substitutions, what we see is now we have the 1 minus x to the power of negative 2 and the 1 minus x to the power of negative 1. This will end up canceling out with one of these, so we get the x times e times the 1 minus x to the power of negative 1, which is going to be this right here, since anything to the power of negative 1 just means it's in the denominator with a positive power of 1. Undoing the substitution, we end up with this right here, which again, the negative exponent right here tells us that this ends up in the denominator, and then we can distribute this in here, so we end up with that in the denominator. So for each of the 3n minus 6 independent vibrations of an n atom molecule, this means that the vibrations for the molecule right here will be equal to the sum of these vibrations for each possible vibrational mode. And so then we substitute this into it right here, and then we are summing over all these different energies. For low energy vibrations, which as we said before, the vast majority of particles have, we can approximate the exponential as its Taylor expansion. So this e to the power of energy over RT is equal to this Taylor expansion right here. If we leave off these higher order terms, which are the ones in red, this gives us this right here. So we're substituting this 1 plus e over RT in for what I have in purple right there. What we see is this 1 will subtract with this 1, so we just end up with e over RT. This e will cancel with that e. This RT, which is in the denominator of a denominator, means that it's in the numerator, so we end up with just RT right there. And so for each low energy vibration, and this is for each low energy vibrational mode, we get that it's equal to RT. And so for all vibrations in the nonlinear molecule, we end up with this right here. So if we sum through all of these different modes, we end up with 3n minus 6 times the RT. And so, like I said, this was for the nonlinear molecule, which looks like this. We see that something like this, which has 3 atoms, we have 3n minus 6. So 3 times 3 is 9, minus 6 gives us these 3 vibrational modes. For something that's linear like this, it's 3n minus 5. So 3 times 3 is 9, minus 5 gives us 4 right here. So we get the 4 vibrational modes for something with 3 atoms that looks like this. So in summary of everything we've talked about so far, the translational energy will be this 3/2 times RT. The rotational energy for a nonlinear molecule will be 3/2 RT, and the rotational energy for a linear will be RT. Since when it's linear, there are only two axes, and so instead of 3, there would be 2/2, which just ends up being RT. For vibrational, if we have a nonlinear molecule, then it's 3n minus 6 RT, and if it's linear, then it's 3n minus 5 RT. And so the total thermal energy or internal energy of a nonlinear molecule, and we're going to look at the nonlinear version, but you could do a similar analysis for the linear version. This is calculated like this. So it's 3 times the energy for translational plus 3 times the energy for rotational plus 2 times the energy for vibrational, which is multiplied by the 3n minus 6 for the different modes. Where the 3 in front of the translational energy is, again, because of the 3 dimensions of space. The 3 in front of the rotational are for the 3 components of the angular velocity vector for a nonlinear molecule in 3-dimensional space. And the 2 in front of the 3n minus 6 times the vibrational energy comes from the fact that there is both potential and kinetic energy. So the vibrational energy, like I said, is equal to the kinetic plus potential energy, which is equal to this kinetic energy right here, plus the Hooke's law right here, which is our potential, if we are modeling this as a harmonic oscillator. So that gives us the 1/2 RT plus 1/2 RT, which is 2/2 RT, which is the RT right here. The energy is therefore, if we add all these up, we end up with 6n minus 6 times the energy. But since for each coordinate it is equal to 1/2 RT, so again, for each coordinate, so for each dimension of space, for each vector component of rotation, and for the potential, and then for the kinetic energy of the vibrations. So what we get is this. So it's the 6n minus 6 times energy, which is the 6n minus 6 times 1/2 RT. So this 1/2 distributes in. We get 3n minus 3 RT. Then we can factor this 3 out. And so what we end up with is this right here. So it's 3 times n minus 1 times RT. So again, this is for the non-linear molecule. A similar analysis, as I said, we could do for the linear molecule. What we would end up with is the 6n minus 5/2 times RT. So right here are the two terms for the internal energy of molecules based on whether it is nonlinear or linear. But anyway, that was everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you found that helpful, and I will see you in the next one.